But back to my point, he was not asking you to be liked. And I wasn't okay with that. I wanted a reason to root for Damien at any cost. I was looking for anything. I was, if I could admire his level of discipline, there was maybe one scene where he appeared to be very institutionalized. He was in some hotel room, he was doing push-ups, he was just staring at the TV very intensely, brushing his teeth, lifting weights, shadow boxing. He was very angry, very upset. So you got the rage, but you didn't really get any discipline from Damien. I think that would have been a good angle for him to go into, where Damien, it wasn't just about rage. Damien's a samurai, he's a ronin. He's equipped with the skill set that can beat Creed straight out of prison. Not because he's angry and emotional and upset because you're living my life, but because I'm a practitioner and I know what I'm doing. And I've always been better than you because you looked up to me as I was rising in the ranks in the Golden Gloves division. I think that would have not necessarily made his character likable, but he would have been more relatable. And I think the story needed that because Rocky has its history of the antagonist. It has its history of the guy that just wants to burn your building down because he wants to have the biggest building in town. This is the Mr. T factor. This is the common Rocky antagonist. And I think to make him, here's one thing, to sort of make him a shade of what Ivan Drago was, because a lot of what went into Ivan Drago, other than the propaganda going around in the 80s and 70s about Russia and how it was sort of analogized through Rocky IV, other than labeling him as a stereotypic Russian that had discipline and he was built like iron, there was nothing outside of that to like him, because if he dies, he dies, and he was evil. At the very least, they could have laid that discipline to a Damien. You understand? So that's what I want to sort of color that with. I want to give it the discipline that you used with this character, who was completely unlikable because he was a psychopath, and sprinkle it on this guy who took the rap for Michael B. Jordan. He spent all those years in prison off a crime that they were both involved in. So Damien trains, and Damien turns around and says, I want a title shot. I want a title shot. And Creed's like, no, you can't get a title shot. Then there's a party at a label. I believe the Creed's wife has she has a singing career, and there is a label party, and she's managing artists now, and Creed gets invited to that. I'm sorry, Damien gets invited to that. So Damien has a plan. You don't know what that plan is so far, but you find out a few scenes later. So long story short, we're at this label party, and Drago, the antagonist in the second film, is there because he is about to have a super fight with a fighter in the movie. His name is Felix. I believe he's played by a real boxer. I think his last name is Benavidez. He's about to have a super fight with Benavidez, and he has an altercation with some thug who's at the label party, and wham! Somebody takes a bat or a stick or a baton and smashes it on his hand, and Drago cannot compete. Then in the very next scene, it's like, whoa, who else do we have? We've got Damien. Because Damien's been here and he's been training for 2 minutes. Of course he deserves a title shot. We have to give Damien a title shot. Damien gets his title shot. It makes the movie feel so small. It makes the movie feel so small that Damien gets his title shot with the Felix character. He defeats him quite decisively. It's pretty clear who the better fighter is. Then there's more turmoil between him and Creed, and then he fights Creed. I'll bring it back to another Rocky. Let's take it to Rocky V, a movie that everybody shits on and everyone hates. I like Rocky V. I like Rocky V because it was grassroots. It was Rocky back in the dirt, in the mud, after he had proclaimed himself, or no, not really proclaimed himself. He had proven himself to be a legend within the boxing world. He had a success, but then there was a crash. And he comes back at least with some self-respect and some dignity. But the character's wrestling with those. He's wrestling with those realities that I was once here and now I'm here. But of course, he's got a very level-headed wife who tells him, it's all about family and love and your son. Rocky V, at the very least, showed you a montage with Tommy. At the very least, they showed you that. He did what he did, and Rocky was training him, and then it was like, go for it, huh? Go, I feel it in your eyes. There was an element to Rocky. This is what makes Rocky V cringe, okay? This is what makes it cringe. Rocky V had an element of hipness to it, didn't it? Like, it had this kind of like, we're going to be sort of like Marky Mark and go for it. Go. The son. Look, and you can only appreciate this if you're actually a fan of the Rocky movies. If you're not a fan of the Rocky movies, you will not enjoy this review, okay? You're just not going to enjoy it. So the son's, he's getting bullied, and then all of a sudden he gets trained at the local gym, and Rocky's ignoring him because he's paying so much attention. He's pouring into Tommy so much. Kid gets trained, and then the bully shows up again. One of the bullies, who's actually Eric from Entourage. I don't know what his real name is. Actually, that was the kid that gets beat up is actually Eric from Entourage, which is strange because he's really big in the film, and then in Entourage, he's like a hobbit. So Rocky's kid's like, come on, go for it. It's going along with the theme of the soundtrack. I'm sure that was intentional. I'm sure that was in the soundtrack was a part of the production, and they just threw that line in there and said, go for it. It was aiming to be so hip and so cool and so like, I got the power. In that film, you had the montage. You had, Tommy was doing his thing. He was knocking out a bunch of people. And then he had the fight with Rocky in the streets. That's what I really loved about it. It was a different environment for Rocky. There was a different motivation behind why Rocky fought. It wasn't a long process where he got to think about it. It wasn't a struggle about fear. It wasn't a struggle about his abilities. It wasn't avenging something. It was just anger. Rocky was angry, of course, because he had been betrayed by Tommy, who showed himself to be a wolf in sheep's clothing and is now insulting him outside of the bar, and he punches Paulie in the face. And then, you knock him down, why don't you try knocking me down? Rocky V was good. Don't let anybody tell you different. Stop the lies, the propaganda. But this is what I didn't like about this current film. He gets in the fight with the Benavides character. We're back to Creed 3. Damien's character has the fight with the Benavides character. And then he antagonizes Creed and fights Creed. As the movie was going along, I was looking at my watch and I was like, wait a minute. So he's going to fight Creed here. Is this going to be some backdoor fight on the street? Like, are they going to have this fight here and it's going to be a draw, and then him and Damien are going to have it out in the street? Because I think that would have been okay. And I know coming from the Rocky V guy, it doesn't really mean much. It just means that I like all or nothing. We fight tonight. Everything ends tonight between you and me. That's why I love Never Back Down. And I'll take it back a little further for you. Only the Strong, which was an extremely cringe movie about Brazilian capoeira style fighting. It was extremely cringe. It was Dom the Dragon Wilson. I think that's his name. But the fight at the end was what you typically like if you like the kind of settings that I like. This is the stage. There's a ring of fire. We've got machetes. It's me and you, and one of us is going to die, even though at the end of that movie, it wasn't a death. It was a weird kick move that may or may not have landed, but somehow it defeated the villain. I enjoy a film that gives me the fighting, and there were great fighting scenes in this movie. The choreography was amazing. It didn't look CGI'd. It didn't look. There was some falsehood to the second Creed film in the fight with Drago. There was just something so video gamey about it. It was so. It felt kind of like the Matrix when he fought the 50 agents. It just seemed very animated and it didn't look believable. But the choreography in this film was just right. It worked. That wasn't my issue. However, my issue was the fact that Damien just appeared and challenged him and then lost and then sort of just didn't care afterwards. They have the fight, you know, the one that you see on the trailer. They have their big fight. Creed wins. Fight seems very short. It doesn't seem like a long, you know, second round, third round, seventh round, eighth round. It didn't seem like a war of attrition. It just seemed like they fought and Creed got the better of him. They were evenly matched throughout the first few rounds and then Creed won. And then he speaks to Damien afterwards. And look, in case I haven't made it very clear, Damien said a lot of offensive things in this film. Like, he really made it seem like this is my time. You took my, you know, you took what I care about the most and you've lived it. You took my dream and you lived my dream. He's so passionate about something that I'm sure has been ruminating in his head for the past 18 years. Then he loses to Creed. And I also want to make this clear, too. This was not Creed's biggest challenge. His biggest challenge was Drago, who, in the film, was training with Adonis. You know, he had the injury, but he still made it to Adonis's training camp, and he trained with him for his up-and-coming fight against Damien. But that wasn't even his biggest test. He beat Damien quite decisively and broke through the... He broke through his own private narrative of Damien is the superior fighter. He's this and he's that. Because in the very first round, Creed was executing. He was dodging and Damien was looking flustered and frustrated. I thought when I saw the trailer that this was going to be Wakanda. This was going to be Killmonger. This was going to be... And I fucking hated Black Panther, by the way. I'm making a reference, but that does not mean that I liked Black Panther. But I thought this was going to be A1 and A2, you know, or, you know, AB, whatever the fuck. I thought that's what it was, but it really wasn't that. It was a guy who, you know, had some ability, but Creed took him out in a couple rounds. It was the fight was trash, but there was one good scene where they filmed everything, and as if I've been told, a lot of the crowd, or when you look out into the crowd in the film, it's digital because this was filmed around the time when COVID had first started. But they had this one interesting sequence where they were sitting across from each other at the end of a round. Damien saw younger Creed and Creed saw younger Damien. So they were looking at each other in their childhood states. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Damien seems to be about 3 to 4 years older than Creed, if not maybe more than that. Because at the beginning of the film, Creed's character looked like he was about maybe 13 and Damien might have been 18 or so. He was already a full-grown man and Creed wasn't. They're looking at each other from these old frameworks, and then they stand up and then they're having a fight all by themselves. There's no crowd, everything is black. And they're having an interesting exchange, and then it ends in a simultaneous jab. They both punch each other, and then that's the end of the round. There is no knockout. This isn't like Rocky against Apollo. That was the only interesting part of the fight. And then, as I said, Creed wins, and then afterwards, you know, he kind of talks to Damien, and Damien's like, you know, your family's waiting for you. After he said insulting things about his apparently, I guess, he said insulting things about Creed's family. And the movie was just kind of, it was small to me. It was a small film. That's my critique at the end of all this. At the end of all this rambling, it was just a very small film. And what made it feel small was Damien rising the ranks so quickly. Rising the ranks so quickly made the film feels so much smaller than it actually was. He sees him in front of the car. He says, I still want to be a boxer. He boxes, spars with Benavidez. Then there's the party. Drago gets hurt. Then Wood Harris's character, every scene of this movie for Wood Harris is him saying, no, 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 Damien, bad idea, bad idea. I feel like that was his script for the film. It was just Damien, bad idea. No, fuck him. Do not fuck with Damien. Wood Harris telling him the obvious. Creed then choosing to throw Damien into the fight. He beats Benavidez, gets him angry, gets Creed angry, challenges him to a fight. Oh my God, I can't believe I left this out. The worst part of the film. You ready? The worst part of the film. This is what it was. This is when I knew that this movie... See, I'm not going to say that this was a shit film. I'm not going to say that because it's very easy to say that about a film these days. It wasn't a shit film. I saw what they were trying to do, but I feel like the villain should have been explored a bit more. There should have been a bit more scenes with the villain and a little less scenes with Creed and his wife. Creed and his daughter, which, I get it. They're building up to have her as the next fighter, the next Creed. Is, she's deaf, but she's also struggling with anger issues herself. A girl takes her book bag at school and she punches the kid in the face. I'm all over the place. Let me tell you about the scene, please. After Creed gets wind of what Damien actually did, which what he did, I'll spoil it to you here, was employ one of his prison buddies to head to the label party and have the altercation with Drago and injure his hand. You find this out because Mama Creed, who dies in the film, sorry to break that to you, Mama Creed reveals that she's been holding letters or keeping letters that Damien sent Creed over the years, and she keeps it in this little nice tin box. She opens it up and she shows Creed a picture of Damien with his cellmates. One of the guys was the guy who did the thing to Drago. So this was an obvious setup, so Damien had an opportunity to jump into the boxing world. After this happens, Creed is so upset, he feels so betrayed that his only course of action is to call ESPN and request to speak to Stephen A. Smith live on air. Why? Why is this 1995? Why would he do that? Why wouldn't Damien just pick up his phone and do an IG live and just speak to his audience and he could say whatever he needs to say there? And I say that because the very next thing that happens, first of all, when he's explaining it to Stephen A. Smith, Stephen A's like, you asked us to talk. You never want to talk to us, but you want to talk to us today. Why do you need to talk to us? And Creed starts off with, well, when I retired, I wanted to this and that. And Stephen A. cuts him off. He's like, you talking about Dame, ain't you? Huh? And then Stephen A. just keeps talking and doesn't allow Creed to speak anymore. Doesn't give him the opportunity to talk, but for some reason he knows everything that's about to come out of Creed's mouth. Stephen A's talking, he's running his mouth, Creed's not saying a word, Damien's watching on TV, Damien calls ESPN in a matter of like a minute or so. Damien, who was just in prison, has one professional fight, becomes the heavyweight, even though he looks like he's about 175 pounds or something like that. He's the heavyweight champion of the world, and he wins the belt, and he's sitting in some mansion. He picks up his iPhone. He got an iPhone all of a sudden. Damien, what's his credit like? He's just getting everything now in the world. So he calls ESPN, and he's having a live argument with Creed. And there's this moment where Michael B. Jordan Creed's character goes, Damien, no, not like this. Because Damien's divulging too much about their personal life. I think he said something about Creed's family. And Creed notices how dirty this all is. And he goes, not like this. On live TV, after you, sir, asked to be on ESPN, you wanted this attention. And here it is. It's live. Maybe what you should have done was done an IG live. And you could have said everything that you needed to say. You wouldn't have been interrupted by Stephen A. Smith. And you wouldn't have Damien infiltrating it. And you having to say, Damien, no, not like this. Damien says, fuck you, I don't give a fuck. And then Creed says, oh yeah, all right, now we fighting. Run that. And Damien said, all right, run that. Damien hangs up the phone. Creed takes the earpiece out and he runs off as if he's ready to train as soon as he walks out of the studio. He just goes into the gym. That was the cringiest part of the film because it was so... It was so unnecessary that he would go through all that pageantry just to say a simple thing. I don't know why he felt the need. He seemed to live a pretty low-key life, and to request to be on ESPN to say... We don't even know what his announcement was going to be. I'm assuming that he was going to say, I'm back to box again. And, you know, maybe the conversation of who he's going to box from then on out, maybe that can be decided. But Stephen A. didn't even give him the opportunity to make any announcement, to give any soundbite. It was just interruption. Damien calls. All right, let's fight. Run it back. I'm going to train as soon as I leave the studio. I think that scene pretty much summed the film up for me. 2 to 3 minutes after that scene went away, I couldn't stop obsessing over, no, this is present time. He has a phone. There's social media. I don't necessarily need a film that's always going to be used as a tool for characters to communicate certain plot points. I don't need that to be the case. I think films sometimes try to make too much of that. They try to make, too many text messaging conversations, and somebody makes a statement and then puts it on their Instagram and they get 30,000 likes the first hour, and then it becomes a thing within the movie. It's like, look what just went viral. TV shows do that all the time. They do that all the time. If you watch any of these TV shows at like marketing firms, people say one thing. They post up a picture of a box cutter, and the box cutter picture went viral. What are we going to do about it? And it's such an easy thing for a writer to use to move a script along, almost to the point when it's lazy. So I don't necessarily need that or want that, but a film that's going to tell me and give me timelines of when things were, because when things were happening between him and Damien, it was 2002, and then it was Los Angeles, present date. If it's present date, make it present. Get on IG Live and say what you need to say, and Stephen A. won't interrupt you.